The Carrawood ate men. I had buried the proof of it 3 times over that winter. 3 good riders swallowed by the mist under those trees, their horses come home riderless with their eyes rolled white. So when I reined up at the tree line that night and saw a light burning deep in the dark of it, low and steady and gold, I did not believe it. Nothing lived in the Carrawood. That was the first law a Greymark child learned. The wood was the wild pack's country, and the wild pack answered to no man and no king, least of all to me. Yet there it was, a fire, miles inside the tree line where not one of my hunters would set a foot after dusk. A small, patient fire, the kind a person tends, the kind that meant hands feeding it and a face bent close. "My lord," Bram had ridden up beside me and his voice had gone thin. "That's a wisp, a corpse light, don't look at it." "It's a fire," I said. "Then it's a trap, and something in there wants us to walk to it." He was likely right. He was a sensible man, Bram, which was why he had lived to grow gray in my service while braver men fed the wood. I sat my horse and I looked at that stubborn little light, and something under my ribs turned over and would not settle. I have no better word for it than that. A pull. As if a rope I had never known was tied to me had gone taut and begun, very gently, to draw. "Wait at the tree line," I told him. "My lord, if I'm not back by the gray of morning, don't come after me. Ride home and tell my brother he's Alpha of Greymark." I gave my horse to him and went in on foot, because a horse would not go where I was going. It planted its legs and rolled its eyes, and I did not blame it. I went in alone, with my sword loose in its sheath and my wolf awake and bristling under my skin, and the mist closed over the road behind me like water closing over a stone. I have been Alpha of a hard border hold since I was 22. I have stood in shield walls and I have hunted things that hunt men, and I do not frighten the way other men frighten. But I will tell you the truth, because there is no shame in it now. The Carrawood frightened me. The trees were older than any kingdom. They stood so close and so high that the sky was only a rumor. The ground was soft with 1,000 years of fallen needles, and my feet made no sound, and neither did anything else, and that silence was the worst of it. A wood should have some small voice, a bird, a branch, a running thing. This one held its breath. And then ahead the light, and around the light eyes. They came out of the dark without a sound, low and gray and enormous, far larger than any pack wolf I had ever bred or hunted. The wild wolves of the Carrawood. I had seen their work 3 times that winter and never once seen them living, and now there were, I counted without wanting to, 9 of them, ringed in a loose crescent between me and the fire, watching me with a stillness that was worse than any snarl. One of them was pale as bone. It stood a little forward of the others, and it did not look at me the way a beast looks at meat. It looked at me the way a sentry looks at a stranger who has come to the wrong gate. I stopped. My hand was on my sword, and I knew, with the cold certainty of a man who has weighed many fights, that if the 9 of them came at me together I would kill 2, perhaps 3, and then I would die in the Carrawood like my riders, and Bram would go home and tell my brother. "Please don't." A voice, a woman's voice, low and even from beside the fire. Not a scream, not a plea flung up in terror. A request, the way you'd ask a guest to mind a step. "They won't hurt you if you don't lift the blade," she said, "but they will if you do, so please don't." I could not see her clearly past the fire. A shape, cloaked, seated on the ground with her back to a great fallen trunk, her hands where I could see them, open and empty on her knees. Everything in me said this was madness, that a living woman could not be here, that the wild pack did not suffer men and had never in living memory suffered anyone. I took my hand from my sword. The pale wolf's ears eased, not all the way, a little. "Come to the fire then," the woman said. "You've come this far, you may as well be warm." I walked in through the ring of them. They let me pass. I felt the heat of the pale one's flank as I went by, close enough to touch, and the animal smell of it and its breath, and it did not so much as turn its head. I have never in my life felt so watched or so oddly, terribly safe. And I hated that I felt safe because it made no sense, and I have built my whole life on things making sense. I came into the firelight and I saw her, and the whole wood went quiet inside me. I do not know how else to say it. All that held breath, all that watching silence, all the pressure of that ancient place that had been sitting on my chest since I crossed the tree line, it let go, all at once, the way a forest lets go its breath when at last the wind comes. I had come into the Carrowwood braced against my death, and I looked at a thin, tired woman by a small fire, and something in me that had been standing guard my whole life quietly sat down. She was young, though not a girl, a woman grown, with a face made plain by hunger and hardship and made beautiful by the thing behind it, a steadiness, a refusal. Her hair was dark and unbound and full of the wood, twigs and needles in it, and her cloak was worn to threads, and her hands, when I looked at them, were cracked and scarred with cold. But her eyes, when they lifted to me, were clear and unafraid and older than her face, and they went over me once, top to boot, weighing me the way I weigh men. "You're the Border King," she said, "Rurik, of the hold on the hill." "I am." "You've lost men in here." "3." "I'm sorry for them," she said, and she meant it. I could hear that she meant it. "They came at night, all 3, with torches and steel and shouting, hunting the pack. The pack defends its wood. I would have warned them if I could. I couldn't." She looked at the pale wolf which had come to lie down at the edge of the light with its head on its paws, still watching me. "They don't understand a man who comes in shouting, but they understood you. You came in afraid and you put down your blade when a stranger asked you to. So, sit. You're safe here, which I know you won't believe." I sat. Across a small fire from a woman, the wild pack of the Carrowwood had made its own, in a wood that killed men, with 9 of the killers lying in a ring around us both, and I was warmer and stranger and more alive than I had been in a year. "How long have you been in here?" I asked her. She thought about it, since the last frost. Before the thaw, which was near 2 months. 2 months in the Carrowwood alone at the end of winter, when my own hardened riders would not last a night. "That isn't possible," I said. "No," she agreed. "It isn't." And she did not explain it, and I did not understand it, and the pale wolf sighed like a dog by a hearth and closed its eyes. Her name was Leora. I got that much before the fire burned low, and I got the shape of how she came to be there, though she told it plainly, without weeping over it, which somehow made it worse. She had been of the Fenmore pack, the lowland pack whose lands ran along the far side of the Carrowwood. Her mother had been a healer there, and her mother's mother, women who kept the old ways and the old blood and were tolerated for their usefulness and never quite trusted for their strangeness. Leora had never shifted. She had reached the age of it and past it, and no wolf had come, and in a pack of wolves, a wolfless woman is a thing to be pitied at best. She had been the healer's daughter who could not run with them, useful, unwed, apart. And then the fever came. It came for the herds first, that winter, the cattle and the sheep going down in the byres, and then it came for the pack itself, and Fenmore's people began to die. And a pack in fear looks for a cause it can name, because a cause you can name is a cause you can cast out. There was a man among them, an elder, the presiding lord of Fenmore since the old Alpha's death. Corwin was his name. I would learn it well, and Corwin stood up in the sickness and the fear, and he named her. The wolfless one, the healer's cursed daughter, her hands on the sick, her herbs in the broth, her strangeness in the blood of the pack. She had brought it. She had always been wrong, and now she had made them all wrong, and if they cast the curse out, the curse would leave them. "They didn't kill me," Leora said, feeding the fire a broken branch. Corwin was careful about that. A pack that murders its own healer's daughter has to look at what it did every morning, so he didn't kill me. He put me out. He walked me to the edge of the Carrowwood at first light, the whole pack behind him so they'd all be part of it and none of them alone with it, and he said the wood would take the curse back into itself. He said it kindly. That was the worst part. He said it the way you'd put a lame dog down, sorry and certain. And then they turned around and walked home, and I stood at the tree line and I thought, well, this is where I die then. But you didn't. No. She looked at the pale wolf again, and something moved in her face that was not quite a smile. I walked in because it was warmer in the trees than in the wind, and I thought I might as well be warm when it happened. And I walked, and it didn't happen. And on the third day I was so far gone with cold that I lay down against this tree to be finished, and I woke up warm. There was a wolf against my back, that one, the pale one, and another across my feet. They'd have killed any Fenmore man on sight. They lay down with the cursed girl and kept her from freezing, and in the morning they brought me a hare, and I understood that whatever I was, whatever was wrong with me, the wild pack didn't think it was wrong. They thought it was theirs. The fire snapped. The wood held its breath and let it go. "You're not cursed," I said. I did not know why I said it with such certainty. I only knew it the way I knew the wood had gone quiet in me when I looked at her. "I don't know what I am," Leora said simply. "I stopped needing to know out here. Out here it doesn't matter. There's the pack and there's the wood and there's what a body has to do to live in it. That's all. It's clean in a way Fenmore never was." She looked at me across the fire and her clear eyes narrowed just slightly, taking my measure again. "Why did you come in, truly? Men don't come into the Carrowwood at night for a light." I could have lied. I was a king. Kings learn to give the answer that serves. But the wood had done something to me, or she had, and the truth came out of me before I could dress it. "I don't know," I said. "I saw the fire and something pulled me and I could not come. I've never felt it before. I don't have a word for it." She went very still. The pale wolf lifted its head. "I do," Leora said softly, and she looked for the first time almost afraid not of me but of the word. "But I won't say it. It's a Fenmore word, and Fenmore words got me put out in the snow. Sleep, Border King. Nothing will touch you while you're in the ring. In the morning I'll walk you to the road and you'll go home, and you'll tell your people you dreamed a woman in the Carrowwood, because no one will believe you anyway." I did not sleep at first. I sat and watched her sleep, the firelight moving on her tired, unbroken face, and the pale wolf watching me watch her with its steady amber eyes, and I thought, I am not leaving her here. I did not know yet all the ways that would cost me. I only knew it the way I knew my own name. In the gray of the morning she woke and found me still there, and she read my face, and she sighed. "You're going to say something foolish," she said. "Come to Greymark. There it is. You can't stay here." "I've stayed here 2 months. I can stay here 2 more and 2 after that." She rose, stiff with cold, and shook out her ruined cloak. "You have a hold full of wolves, Border King. They'll smell Fenmore on me and the wild wood on me, and they'll want me gone or dead within the hour, and your fine people will decide the cursed girl has come to bring them fever, and it'll be Fenmore all over again, only I'll have farther to fall. I know how it goes. I've had it go." "They won't," I said, "because you'll be under my hand, and no one in Greymark lifts against what's under my hand." She looked at me a long moment. "And what am I that I'd be under your hand, your prisoner, your charity, your strange story to tell at feasts?" "My guest," I said, "as long as you want to be, and free to walk back into this wood the day you'd rather be here than there. I won't keep you. I've never kept anyone who didn't choose it, but I'm asking you to choose Greymark, at least for the thaw, at least until you're not walking on frozen feet." I do not know what she saw in my face. Something, I think, that Corwin of Fenmore had never let her see in his, that I meant it, that the door I was offering had no lock on the inside of it. She looked at the pale wolf. The pale wolf looked back at her, and then, deliberately, it rose and it turned and it began to walk toward the tree line, toward the road, toward Greymark, and it stopped, and it looked back at her over its shoulder. "Even you," Leora said to it very quietly, and her voice broke just a little on the words, and that was the only time in all of it I saw her come close to weeping, not when she told me how they cast her out, but when the wild wolf told her to go be warm. She came to Greymark. The whole pack came with us to the edge of the wood. 9 wild wolves walking loose through the Carrowwood at a woman's back, and me among them like a man walking underwater, hardly believing my own feet. At the tree line they stopped. Bram was there, gray-faced, having waited the whole night against my orders, and when he saw me come out of the killing wood alive with a ragged woman and a wall of wild wolves behind her, he made the old sign against ill luck, and I did not blame him. The pale wolf came to the very last tree. It would not cross into the open. None of them would. Leora went to it and knelt and put her forehead against its forehead, and it stood for that, and then she rose and walked out of the wood and did not look back, because I think if she had looked back she would not have been able to leave, and the pale wolf watched her go, and then the mist took it and they were gone. "My lord," Bram said carefully as we rode. Leora sat before me on my horse, too weak to ride her own, wrapped in my cloak. "Who is she?" "A woman the wood wouldn't kill," I said. "That's all you need to tell the hold. She's my guest. She's under my hand. That's the end of it." It was not, of course, the end of it. It was barely the beginning. Greymark received her the way a hard hold receives anything strange, with silence and sidelong looks, and 100 small cruelties dressed as caution. She was Fenmore. Everyone knew Fenmore had cast out a cursed girl in the winter. Word travels the border faster than any rider. And here she was alive, brought home by their alpha from the one wood that eats men, and the arithmetic of it made people afraid, and frightened people are unkind. They left dishes unwashed for her to wash. They fell silent when she entered a room and started up again, low, when she left. My own aunt, who kept my household, put her in a servant's cell by the kitchen and gave her a servant's work. And when I heard of it, I went to move Leora to a proper chamber, and Leora stopped me at the door. "Leave it," she said. "A cell by the kitchen is warmer than a wood in winter, and there's bread. I've had worse beds than this, Border King, and I'll have worse again, most likely. Don't fight my battles. It only makes them longer. Let them get used to me, or let them not. Either way, I'd rather earn my keep than be a king's charity that everyone resents. Give me the sick to tend. That I can do." I gave her the sick to tend, because she asked it and because I could refuse her nothing, though I did not yet let myself know that was why. And that was where it began to turn. Because Leora, whatever else she was a healer to the marrow, better than any I had known. She sat with our fevered and our failing. She knew herbs no one in Greymark knew, wood lore, old cures, the ways her mother and her mother's mother had kept. A carter's boy who had been going to die of a wound gone bad did not die. She cut it and cleaned it and packed it with something green and bitter she found in my own neglected garden, and in a week he was walking. An old woman with a cough that had rattled in her chest for 3 winters slept a whole night through for the first time in memory. She asked nothing. She took the worst cases, the ones no one wanted to sit with, the ones that stank and raved, and she sat with them through the dark and did not flinch. And one by one, the people of Greymark found they could not quite go on hating a woman who had held their dying grandmother's hand. And the wolves took to her. That was the thing that turned my aunt in the end, though she'd have died before admitting it. My holds pack my own wolves, trained and bred and loyal to me, would not be trained to distrust her. Pups followed her down the passages. My own Grey, the great scarred beast that had run at my side through a dozen fights and let no other hand touch him, took to lying across the threshold of her kitchen cell at night, and when I found him there the first time and called him, he looked at me and looked at her sleeping form and did not come. My own wolf, choosing her door. I stood in that passage a long while in the dark, and I let myself know the thing I had known since the Carrowwood. She was mine, my mate, the one the old stories promised and I had stopped believing in, because I had reached the age of it and past it and no bond had ever struck me, and I had made a hard peace with the notion that some alphas simply go through the world alone, and I was one of them. And then a wood that kills men had refused to kill her, and I had walked into it, and the whole world had gone quiet in me. And here was my own wolf lying across her door like a sworn guard, and I was a fool of a border king standing in a passage at midnight with his heart in his throat like a boy. I did not tell her. I want that known. I did not go to her and press my claim, because a bond is not a leash and a mate is not a possession, whatever the old cruel songs say, and she had been possessed and cast off once already by people who called it love. If she was to be mine, it would be because she turned and chose it freely, with her feet on solid ground and the door unlocked behind her. So I said nothing. I let her heal my people and win my hold one bitter heart at a time, and I found reasons to be where she was, and I learned the sound of her laugh, which was rare and low and worth the earning, and I fell the rest of the way in love with her like a slow snow filling a valley, and I said nothing. She knew. I think she knew from the fire and the carrowwood, from the words she would not say. But she said nothing either, and we went on in that sweet and terrible silence through the end of the thaw, two people carefully not naming the thing that stood between them, both of us afraid, she that I would prove to be Fenmore after all, I that she would choose the wood. And then Corwin came. He came in the first true green of the year, riding up to my gate at the head of a dozen Fenmore men, under the branch of parley, all courtesy and grief. Fenmore had heard, of course. The whole border had heard by then. The Greymark king had a wolfless Fenmore woman in his hold, the very one their pack had put out to the wood alive. And that could not stand for Corwin. A cursed girl cast out to die was a story with an ending. A cursed girl living well in a king's hold, healing his sick, winning his people, was a story that asked a question. And the question was whether Corwin of Fenmore had murdered an innocent woman with the whole of his pack for witness. So he came to close the story. He was not what I expected. I had built him, in my mind, into a brute. He was instead a lean, tired, careful man with kind eyes and a gentle voice, and that was so much worse, because I understood at once how a whole pack had followed him into casting out a girl. He did not rage. He grieved. He sat at my table and he said all the right and sorrowful things. "We failed her," he said, and his voice was heavy with it. "I have not slept thinking of it, but you must understand, my lord, what we faced. The fever was in the byres and then in our children. People were dying. And she, I do not say she willed it, God forgive me for the man I was, but the old blood in that family, the strangeness, the wolflessness, and the sickness spreading from her mother's very hands." He spread his own. "A frightened pack does terrible things. I did a terrible thing. And I have come to make it right." "How?" I asked. "Do you make right putting a woman in a wood to die?" "By taking her home." He leaned forward, all earnest sorrow. "She is Fenmore. She is ours to answer for. Let us take her home and care for her and do penance for what we did in front of the pack that wronged her, so it is undone the same way it was done. It is only right, my lord. She belongs to us." "She belongs," I said, "to no one but herself, and she is my guest and she chooses where she goes." Something flickered behind the kind eyes then, quick and cold, and I saw the other man in him, the one who could name a girl a curse in front of a frightened crowd. "Of course," he said smoothly. "Of course. Let us ask her then, in front of both our packs. Let her choose freely, with all as witness. Surely a just king would allow her that." And I could not refuse it, because I had made my whole claim on the word freely, and to deny her the choice before witnesses would be to make myself the jailer he was painting me. He had built the trap well. He was a careful man. 3 days, I said. At the spring gathering, both packs. She'll speak for herself, and whatever she chooses, it stands, and you'll abide it and take your grief home either way. On that you'll give me your word before your men." "On my honor," said Corwin, and smiled his sad, gentle smile, and I wanted to put my fist through it. I found Leora in the garden, on her knees in the dirt among the green things she'd coaxed back to life, and she rose when she saw my face and knew before I spoke. "He's here," she said. "Corwin, yes. For me. He wants to take you home to Fenmore, to do penance, to undo it." I heard how thin it sounded even as I said it. Leora laughed, and there was no warmth in it. "To close the book," she said, "a living witness is an inconvenient thing. He'll take me home to Fenmore and I'll have an accident within the season or a relapse of the curse, and the story will end the way it was always meant to. I know him, Rurik. I know exactly how kind he'll look while he does it." She wiped the dirt from her hands slowly. "What did you promise him?" "That you'll choose freely before both packs at the gathering, and that whatever you choose it stands." I made myself say the rest. "Including the wood, including Fenmore, including anywhere that isn't here. I won't make you a prisoner to keep you safe. I couldn't build the whole thing on your freedom and then take it away the moment it frightened me. So it's yours, it's really yours. I only," and here the king's careful tongue failed me entirely, "I only hope you'll choose to stay. I've hoped it since the fire. I should have said it 100 nights ago, and I was a coward. Stay, Leora. Not because a wood wouldn't kill you or because I pulled you out of it. Stay because Greymark is yours if you want it, and so am I, and I'll spend the rest of it earning that you did." The garden was very quiet. She looked at me with her clear, weighing eyes, and for once I could not read what was behind them. "You'd let me walk back into the wood," she said, "truly, if I chose it. Truly, it would break me, but I'd let you. That," she said softly, "is the difference between you and every man of Fenmore I've ever known." She looked down at her dirt-stained hands. "But you don't understand what you're asking me to do, standing up in front of both packs. You're asking a wolfless, cursed, cast-out woman to stand before 200 wolves and their kings and say I choose to stay, and you think that fixes it. It doesn't fix it, Rurik. Corwin doesn't need to win the choosing. He only needs me to stand up there so the whole border can see what I am, a wolfless thing playing at being a border king's lady, and then it won't matter what I choose because I'll have proved his story true with my own body. A Luna who can't shift. They'll never bow to that. Your own pack will turn. He knows it. That's why he wants it public. He's not fighting for me. He's using me to break you." And she was right. She saw it clear and whole, the way she saw everything, and I had walked us into it. "Then we don't choose in public," I began. "No, we do." Her chin came up, and there was that steadiness in her, that refusal, the thing that had made a wood love her. "We do it in front of everyone because I am done being a story other people tell. I have been the healer's cursed daughter and the wolfless girl and the thing the wood should have eaten, and I have never once in my whole life stood up in front of them all and been myself out loud. If I'm going to fall, Rurik, I'll fall standing, not hiding in a garden, standing." She took a breath. "I don't know what I am. I've never known, but I know I'm not what Corwin says I am. And in 3 days I'm going to find out what I am in front of everyone, and I would rather do that than run back into the wood and let him win it clean. So, yes, we choose in public, both packs, let them all watch. I have commanded fighting men. I have never in my life seen courage like that woman standing in a garden with dirt on her hands, choosing to walk into the thing designed to destroy her, because she would not be a story anymore. Then we choose in public," I said, "and whatever you are, Leora, I'll be standing next to it." The gathering was held on the green below my hold, where the 2 packs' lands and the edge of the Carrowwood all came near together, an old meeting ground from older days. Greymark on one side, Fenmore on the other, near 200 wolves and their people, and the tree line of the Killingwood dark and close behind us all, so that everyone stood a little turned from it, the way you stand turned from a thing you fear. Corwin came in mourning gray, all humility. He spoke to the gathering first, and he was very good. He grieved his sin before them, the casting out, the fear that had driven a good pack to a terrible act. And then gently, so gently, he laid the trap. He asked only that the woman they had wronged be given her free choice, to come home to Fenmore and be made whole, or to stay in Greymark as its king's guest. He asked only that she stand before them and choose, so that all might witness Fenmore's penance and the border's justice. He asked it so kindly that Greymark folk who had never met him nodded along, and I saw Leora's plan and Corwin's plan close together like 2 hands, and my mouth went dry. Then Leora walked out to the center of the green, alone, in a plain green dress the color of the garden she loved, and she stood before 200 wolves and did not shrink, and Corwin smiled his sad, patient smile, waiting for the wolfless woman to damn herself with her own steadiness. "You cast me out to die," she said. Her voice was not loud, but the green was silent and it carried. "You walked me to the wood at first frost, all of you together, so none of you would have to be alone with it. And you told yourselves the wood would take the curse. I know, I was there. I remember every face." Corwin's smile stayed fixed. He had expected accusation. Accusation only made her look bitter, and a bitter cast-off woman is easy to pity and easy to dismiss. "But the wood didn't take me," Leora went on. "And I've spent 2 months and more asking myself why, and standing here I think I finally know. You said I was cursed because I was wolfless, because the change never came for me the way it came for you. You looked at a girl with no wolf and you decided she was empty, broken, a hole where a wolf should be, and holes let the bad in." She lifted her head. "But I wasn't empty. I was full of something you'd forgotten how to see. My mother knew it." Her mother knew it. The old blood, you called it, and you were right, only you thought it was a sickness, and it was never a sickness. It was the first blood, older than the Packs, older than Fenmore. The blood the Wildwood still remembers, though you've all forgotten it. That's why no wolf ever came to run at my side. She turned slowly, so she was facing not the Packs but the dark tree line of the Carrowwood behind us all. No small wolf would ever come for me. I was never meant to run with a pack. I was meant to be answered by one. And she raised her scarred, dirt-loving hands toward the wood, and she called, not with words, with something under words, a sound that went into the ground and up my spine and made every trained wolf on that green go rigid and every hackle rise, and the Carrowwood answered. They came out of the tree line in the failing light, gray and pale and enormous, more than I had ever seen, more than the 9, 20 of them, 30, the whole wild pack of the Killingwood pouring out onto the green with the pale one at their head, and 200 pack wolves and their people fell back before them in a wave of terror, and Fenmore's men cried out, and Corwin's careful face at last, came apart. The wild pack did not touch a soul. They flowed across the green like gray water, past the cowering packs, past me, and they went to Leora and they ringed her, and then the pale one first, and then the rest, 30 wild wolves of the wood that eats men, they lay down. They put their great heads to the earth before her. They knelt on the open green, in front of 200 witnesses, to the wolfless woman Fenmore had thrown to them to die. And as they knelt, a light woke on the back of Leora's raised hand. I had never seen the like, not the mate marks of the old songs, but something older, a pale silver mark like moonlight caught under the skin, spreading and glowing as the wild pack bowed, the first blood recognizing its own. The whole green was on its knees now, wolves and men together, some from reverence and some from raw animal instinct they could not have named, bowing to a thing far older than any king. Leora stood alone in the center of it all, the mark alight on her hand, the wild pack of the Carrowwood at her feet, and she was not a cursed girl and had never been one, and every soul on that green could see it, and Corwin of Fenmore stood among the few still on his feet with his mouth open and no sound in it, and his whole careful story turning to ash in his hands. I crossed the green to her. The wild wolves let me pass, as they had let me pass in the wood, and I came to her through the ring of bowed gray backs, and I went down on one knee before her, the Alpha of Greymark on his knee, before all his people and all of Fenmore and 30 kneeling wild wolves, and I took her marked hand in both of mine. They knelt, I said, only for her, the whole wood. I told you you weren't cursed. You did, she said, her eyes were bright. In the firelight, before anyone, you were the first one to say it out loud, and her fingers tightened on mine. I'll stay Border King, I choose it, not because a wood wouldn't kill me, because a man knelt in the dark of it and put his sword down when a stranger asked him to. Her voice dropped so only I could hear it, warm and unsteady and finally unafraid. The word I wouldn't say that night, it was mate. I've known since the fire. Say it back or I'll never forgive you. Mate, I said before all of them, loud enough for the border to hear it to its farthest hold. Mine if you'll have me, not to keep. To stand beside. I rose, and I did not let go of her hand, and I turned us both to face the packs. Leora of the first blood of Greymark now, and it's Luna if she'll take it. And any soul who names her cursed again names her king a liar, and I'll answer it. No one on that green would ever name her cursed again. You do not, once you have seen the killing wood kneel to a woman in a green dress. Corwin of Fenmore did not have his accident in the end, nor any revenge. There is a fitting justice in what happened to him instead, and it was Leora's doing, not mine. When his own men had backed away from him on the green, when his pack had seen what he had truly thrown to the wood and how nearly he'd murdered it twice, Fenmore turned from him the way a frightened pack turns, quick and total and merciless, and put him out. Not to the wood. They had learned that much. They only set him on the road with a horse and a week's bread, an old man alone, to make his own way in the wide world he'd sent a young woman to die in. And Leora, who owed him nothing but her ruin, went out to the road as he passed the tree line, and she stood in his path, and I stood back and let her, because it was hers to do. I did not hear all of what she said to him. I heard the end. She said, "You told me the wood would take the curse. You were closer to right than you knew. The wood took me in and made me what I am, and now here you are cast out to it in your turn, and it won't have you, Corwin, because you have nothing in you it wants. That's the difference between us. That's what Wolfless meant all along. Go on, live. That's the cruelest thing I can wish you, and the kindest, go on and live, and know every day of it that the girl you murdered is a queen." And she stepped aside and let him pass and did not watch him go. That is the sort of vengeance a woman like Leora takes. She let him live, in a world that had finally seen what he was. I could not have been so merciful. It is one of 10,000 ways she is better than me. She is Luna of Greymark now, and more than Luna, the border does not have a word for what she is, so it has taken to calling her simply the Lady of the Wood, and speaking it with a lowered voice. The Carrowwood no longer eats men, or not the men of Greymark. My riders pass through it as safely as through my own halls, because the Pale One and its kin know her scent on us and let us be. She goes into the wood whenever she wishes, and the wild pack meets her at the tree line and walks with her, and sometimes I go with her, and I am no longer afraid there. The wood does not hold its breath around me anymore. It only lets it out, the way it did the first night, when I looked at a thin woman by a fire and something in me that had stood guard my whole life quietly sat down. We had our first child in the second autumn, a dark-haired daughter with her mother's clear, weighing eyes, and when she was 3 days old Leora carried her to the tree line of the Carrowwood, and the pale wolf came out of the mist and looked at the small thing in her arms a long while, and then bent its great head, and I understood that whatever my daughter would turn out to be, wolf or wolfless or first-blooded or something with no name at all, the wild wood would call her its own, and no one would ever put her out in the snow for it. Sometimes, on the cold nights, I find my old gray wolf lying across the threshold of our chamber, the way he used to lie across the door of a kitchen cell, keeping his own watch over her. I've stopped calling him off. He chose her before I let myself choose her. He knew, that scarred old beast, before his king did. I was a border king who had made a hard peace with going through the world alone. Then I saw a light where no light should be, and I put down my sword because a stranger asked me to, and the whole world went quiet in me and has stayed quiet since. They cast her to the wild wolves of the deep wood to be rid of a curse. The wolves knew what Fenmore never could, that she was no curse, but the oldest blessing of all, come home. And in the end they knelt to their queen on the open green in front of everyone, and so did I, and so, one bitter heart at a time, did the whole of Greymark. I have knelt to her every night since, in the small private way that is only ours, her hand in both of mine at the closing of the door. It is the truest thing I do. It is the only crown I have ever wanted to wear.